Okay, there you are. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Okay, welcome back to the channel.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to my channel. I am Steven, the lifting dermatologist, a Belgian doctor with 30 years of weightlifting experience and the author of Flexibel Dieet and Krachttraining. If you want to learn more about fitness and nutrition, hormones and anti-aging,
please like and subscribe.
all this to optimize your life overall. And hit that notification bell so you won't miss anything. I also invite you to join my other YouTube channel TRT and Hormone Optimization. The link you can find in the description of this video. Okay, let's dive into the questions. First one. Can you explain the mechanisms by which it is better to periodize and alternate training blocks of intermediate to high rep workouts for the slow twitch fibers with training blocks of intermediate to lower rep workouts for the fast twitch muscle fibers? That instead of doing reverse pyramid training, for example, where you go from low rep high intensity to high rep low intensity in the same exercise, in the same workout, training all the muscle types. Why is periodizing better?
Yeah, good question. So we don't know periodizing better for sure. Periodizing better for sure, because there's been no direct study on the matter. But we can use some reasoning based on what we do know to hypothesize that periodizing may give us some advantages. So as usual with periodization, we don't just have a top-down view of like, let's do this. We have an understanding of some facts physiologically or some likelihoods, and then we start to think, okay, like given that these things are this way, what's a good way? What's maybe a not so great way of approaching them? So the first concern that's immediately apparent with fiber types is they recover at vastly different rates. Okay, slower twitch fibers simply don't take as much damage from training because they don't exhibit as much sort of force per motor unit, you could say, because their motor units are smaller. And they typically, every single thing about a slow twitch fiber, or most things that are pertinent, imply and in fact show a much faster rate of recovery from any kind of damage, deformation, and in fact force production. So we can immediately hypothesize that while you may be able to train all of your fibers, let's say 3 times a week, a certain degree of volume and intensity, you may be able to train your slow twitch fibers 6 times a week, but your fastest twitch fibers only 3 times a week. So basically, if you sometimes prioritize slower twitch fibers and lay off the faster twitch fibers, you could simply be getting more hypertrophy. And the next question it can be asked of, okay, well, why not when we do faster twitch fiber training, why don't we also do a ton of slower twitch fiber training? The answer to that may be the following: that the faster fibers are, very, very not fatigue resistant, and they can accumulate a lot of fatigue and actually become quite impaired even within their own workouts. So you can exceed the maximum adaptive volume of a lot of your faster twitch fibers, even if you stop stimulating them a lot and start stimulating slower fibers more. So we could say, what about a workout that does fast and slow fibers, and then the next workout does just the slow, and the next workout fast and slow? That's probably a good idea, but a problem with implementing that is that when you train mostly or just bias your training towards your faster fibers, after you're done with that, when you go to biasing training to slower fibers in the same workout, sometimes your faster fibers, is because of fatigue, are still active and still pick up a lot of fatigue, so to end up beating them too much. So there may be something to doing some of your training with slightly lower reps and lower total volumes to really hit the faster fibers, and then doing other workouts later that are a bit more biased towards slower fibers. And then while you're recovering from the faster fiber workout, you hit the slower fiber workout, it interferes with recovery a little bit, but then you recover or do a faster fiber workout and so on and so forth. What I would say is actually that's probably a pretty small concern in the grand scheme of things. There are other concerns for periodizing intensity that are probably even more pertinent. For example, performance. If you do heavy sets of 5 to 10, several days later, you're able to do a high performance workout with sets of 10 to 20, but you're not able to do high performance workout with sets of 5 to 10. A lot of that's because of specificity. The specific neurological structures and physiological structures are still fatigued because you just use them. But also, it's a lot easier to crank out reps than it is crank out heavy loads. Like if you're pretty tired, How many times, Stephen, have you been in the gym and you're like, oh man, I'm super tired. Let's just get a workout. Someone's like, okay, so super heavy, right? You're like, no. But they're like, what about a lot of volume? You're like, yeah, I can just do more volume. You can always do more sets, right? And higher reps are easier. So maybe in addition to that, there's some injury concerns. For example, the highest peak forces you will see in your entire week of training is from the 5 to 10 rep range, the very heaviest weights. If you have some micro fracturing done, which will absolutely happen to muscles and tendons, connective tissue, so on and so forth, from a 5 to 10 workout, doing another 5 to 10 workout can make it worse and make it an injury. But doing a workout in the 10 to 20 rep range after that, and then 2 days later doing one in the 20 to 30 rep range, the peak forces drop throughout the week, even though the volumes go up or stay stable. So like your chances of getting hurt, like let's say you did sets of 8 on a squat, your chances of getting hurt trying to do sets of 8 again on Wednesday after you did it Monday is, like, of course it's low, but it's significant. It's something. What about your chances of doing sets of 15 on the leg press, getting hurt in your quads? Gee, like you're just not throughputting the forces necessary to challenge that, even though the structures have been slightly degraded. So if you have a choice, I think usually within the week, it might be a good idea. It might be a good idea in hypertrophy training to do like your heaviest training. Let's say you do 3 times a week training for the same muscle group, just an easy example. Sets of 5 to 10 in the first workout, sets of 10 to 20 in the second workout, sets of 20 to 30 in the third workout. It means a reduction of force, which keeps you safe. Also, earlier in the week, you train more your faster twitch fibers, giving them the rest of the week to recover more. Later in the week, you train your slower fibers more because you can still beat them up. And then you take an extra day off at the end of that cycle. So for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, hypothetically, if you were do a symmetrical plan, you would train again on Sunday, right? Because it's a day later. But you take Sunday off and then come back Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That heals everything much more, letting you come back and hit your heaviest workout again on Monday. So that's how I would periodize it. I think that takes care of some of the fiber type stuff and also takes care of the injury risk stuff, the ability to perform stuff, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very interesting. And the next question was a bit on the same point. The question was from someone else, and he asked, if someone is in a high rep, lots of volume training block, is it better to do all the work in one session instead of dividing it over, for example, 2 sessions? He gave an example. If I would do 5 sets of 10 on the squat, is it better to do 5 sets of leg press immediately after that in the same session, or rather do it another day when he is less fatigued and can do even more volume for his legs?
Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, splitting up training works better than condensing it. Yeah, so on average, that's actually the case. There is a point at which the length of time it would take you to re-warm up and the mind-muscle connection formed and the number of effective reps relative to total reps that you're doing is actually better done within the same workout. I think definitely up to 2 to 3 sets per workout. There's no point in splitting up your workout into like 1 to 2 sets at a time and coming back. As a matter of fact, probably some negatives to that. 2 to 4 sets, I would say, is pretty equivocal, whether or not you want to split up into sets of 2 and sets of 4, but you get almost no difference. So like why? Like and warm up, you'll save time on the warm up because you're already at the gym, right? 4 to 6 sets, I would say, is like 50-50. I'm not sure which one is, if it's better to split it up. So like, for example, if someone say, should I do 3 sets now and 3 sets later, or should I just do all 6 sets? I don't know. I think it's probably it goes out in the wash, like with 2 to 4, except, now like the warm up times, it's for 3 sets, so it might be more justifiable. So I'm not sure. So I would say, like, if you're having 1 to 2 sets, definitely just do both 2 sets at the same time. 2 to 4, probably on efficiency standards, still best to do in a single workout. So if you're doing as many as 4 sets in a single workout, I wouldn't split it. 4 to 6, I'd say, is anyone's game. 6 to 8 might be a small advantage to splitting it, but as James Krieger's literature review has shown, in a variety of studies, the maximum adaptive volume they've seen over a mesocycle average per session seems to be around 8 sets. So I don't think there's definitely no huge advantage in splitting up the sessions like that, but there might be a small one, maybe a temporary amount of time. Anytime you go over 8 sets, there's a very clear advantage to splitting up the volume. Maybe it's not realistic. So for example, at the beginning of your mesocycle, you're doing like 4 sets, the middle you're doing 8. At the end of your mesocycle, you're doing 12. Like, you're not going to change your entire frequency structure in the middle of the mesocycle to get those last 4 sets done in some other session. But like, if you're chronically training in excess of 10 sets per session, definitely in excess of 15 sets per session, splitting it up is by far the best idea for a variety of reasons, including that you'll have a higher performance.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I do that as well.
You know
Okay.
what's funny? Sorry, real quick just on a personal note, when the literature started coming out about maximum adaptive volume per session, I'd never written about it because I didn't want to speculate beyond my ability to read the research and sort of intuit from physiological mechanisms. But I tell you this, over my 20 years of training, every time I did more than like 12 sets per session for a muscle group, I was just like, what the fuck am I still doing here? Like, you literally lose mind muscle connection, your pump starts to be not so great, and you're just like, I just don't think I'm accomplishing a whole lot. And I'll tell you, for some muscle groups, like for legs, for quads, dude, 8 sets is the most I've regularly done in a workout. That fucks you up. And people like literally ask me on Instagram, they're like, only 8 sets for this quad workout, Dr. Mike? I'm like, have you ever done 4 sets of leg presses, 15 to 20 reps, and then 4 sets of squats, like 8 to 12 reps? You're going to die. Like, that's a crazy workout. And people say, like, oh, I do 20 sets for quads. Like, I'm really curious as to what you call squatting and leg pressing. I don't believe you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
once the literature came out saying, any more than 12 sets is probably not reliably a good idea to do it any one time, like, I just don't think, I'm definitely not surprised by it. I'm like, wow, I actually hadn't noticed that myself. I don't know. What about you? Have you noticed that like anything after a certain number is just like seems dumb?
Yeah, I never go over 10 sets of the same for the same muscle group. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You just don't know what you're doing anymore. Just to switch
Totally.
it
And
up.
you see like the bodybuilder stuff where they do like 20 or 25 sets per workout. It's like, okay. At that point, that the exact question here comes up. It's like, if you do Monday chest and you're doing 20 sets, why not do 10 sets on Monday and 10 sets on Thursday? Tell me your overall quality of the workout's not going to be better. I've never heard a good retort to that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The other question was about muscle fiber types again. Someone said, I know some muscle groups have more fast twitch fibers and others have predominantly slow twitch fibers. Should I just go with what I experienced after years of training? And for example, for front delts, do only high rep work if they are more slow twitch? Or are there ways to get around that? Is there any point in trying, or should I just focus on the training most appropriate for that muscle group?
So I think there's a very likely benefit in diversity. So there's no muscle with only slow twitch or only fast twitch fibers. And so you should have a diversity in loading. So your front delts, for example, should have your average training block, probably in your average mesocycle and maybe even an average week of training. Some of the training should be in the 5 to 10 rep range. Some should be in the 10 to 20, some in the 20 to 30. It can be as little as 10% in one of them if you really don't feel that range much, but it should be something, probably, right? So I like to have a good load diversity and sort of make sure I'm training in all the different ranges, but you can bias how much of your training you're doing into the range you get the best pumps from, best amount of soreness per set, because soreness is not something we're trying to achieve. But if you do 4 sets and it gets you sore as fuck versus 4 sets of another intensity, you don't feel a thing, it's probably more disruptive, probably more hypertrophic. And by better mind muscle connection, better ability to execute the exercise with technical proficiency. Like if anytime you squat with sets of like 8, you're just like can't feel your quads at all, and you don't even perceive tension through them. It's just like a glute exercise. But if you do squats for sets of 15 or leg presses for sets of 15, it feels amazing. Then maybe you should stick mostly to that. I think there's some thing to be said for a couple of sets of heavy squats, maybe every Monday or something. But then as soon as you're done with that, go right into the lighter work. So I think perceiving where your best have your best rep ranges, where you get your best, the technical term, I guess, is stimulus to fatigue ratio, in what intensity range, bias most of your work to that range, but not all of it. And some muscles will have like a very broad range. So for example, my quads, like there's a kind of stimulus I get from sets of 8 in the heavy squat that I just can't replicate with any high rep stuff. Like it's this full tension through my entire quads where I get off the machine and I'm like, oh my God, like it's deep, deep disruption. And then there's something that sets of 10 to 20 just can't be beat for quads because of gnarly pump, super crazy and heavyweight at the same time. It's like a real, probably the best range for me. But then, I can't always train like that because it beats up my joints to train that heavy. So sometimes I'll do sets of, 20 to 30 leg extension, walking lunges, maybe leg presses. That doesn't work regularly, but it gets you a crazy burn and it takes some weight off the joints. So you can have another hypertrophic session that offers something slightly different and still grows muscle. So For quads, for example, I can't say one of the ranges is definitely better than another, so I train most of them roughly evenly. For my pecs, on the other hand, anything over 20 reps is legit like I'm just doing cardio. Like I actually lose a pump doing sets of 20 for my pecs. It's like they're just pretending. Sets of 5 give me huge pec pumps because of how fast twitch my pecs are. And they've always been super strong. They've grown super fast. They get super fucking sore. Their MRV is super low. They have every single characteristic of a faster twitch dominant muscle fiber. And then sets of 10 to 20 are like, okay. So for my pecs, I bias really heavy. For quads, I bias even. And for other muscles, like I'm pretty sure my biceps are pretty slow twitch. Like if I do sets of 5 in the curl, like I could just be as well doing nothing except hurting my joints. I'm like, ow, ow, ow. Like if I do a set of 25, I'm like, crazy mind muscle connection, crazy pump. So it's different for every muscle, and you have to make the adjustments as you see fit.
Yeah, exactly. During the decades that I have trained, I can exactly say for that muscle group, best is that range. And yeah, I mostly stick with that. Okay, one simple question. Next one. Does an advanced lifter still has to train calves and abs? That's something we see a lot in discussions.
Yeah. So the first thing is, do you want calves and abs? You know, some people who are, so if you're competing on stage, absolutely you have to train your calves, no question. Very few lifters have ever had calves that were too big. Very few bodybuilders. If you're just gifted with calves and they're completely insane looking, you cannot train them. Now, on the other hand, if you just want to be jacked and your calves don't grow much anyway, and they're just a pain in the ass, and you just don't give a shit, fuck it, right? However, if you're just the average guy who wants big everything and calves is one of them, yes, you have to train calves the rest of your career. Abs. For people interested in purely physique, you actually never have to train abs because simply using compound heavy basics trains your abs enough so that when you're sufficiently lean, you'll have awesome abs. Like I've never heard a complaint about my abs. I have like really deep, actually, when I do my side poses, like side chest and like side triceps, my abs are like ravioli, pop out abs. I don't remember the last time I did an ab exercise. Like, simply don't. If you want bigger abs than you have now, you should train abs. But as you go from beginner to advanced, you're going to grow abs anyway. So definitely don't have to train them as advanced. And I would say if you're a beginner and you want to be jacked eventually anyway, training abs a lot is probably a pretty big waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Okay, next question was especially something for you. How to combine martial arts training and bodybuilding? Can you give some basic principle advice so that one type of training doesn't interfere with the other type?
Yeah, I have 2 good recommendations before I give just a real broad summary. One is go to YouTube and type in my last name Israetel with BJJ weights, and you'll get the first video that pops up is an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes of me talking every single intricacy in this subject.
Okay.
Another one is Chad Wesley Smith, lifting jiu-jitsu. And one of the top videos that comes up is Chad's interview with another gentleman where they talk about how to actually design workout plans step by step around your martial arts training. Really good stuff. I can't possibly do it more justice than that 3 total hours of video does. But what I will say is this. First step, know your total MRV. And if you don't know it, start really, really like very small. So if you're already lifting and you want to do martial arts, let's say you're lifting 6 days a week and you want to start martial arts. You want to do 2 sessions of martial arts, do not continue to lift 6 days a week. Go to 4 days a week, probably to 3, because you don't know how bad you're going to get beat up. As you experiment with the training and see that you can in fact recover, maybe you can add some sessions or add some volume. Maybe not. Maybe you can't recover and you need to go even lower. So I would say err on lower. In addition to that, whatever priority you have for martial arts or lifting, whichever one is first, I would say do that first in the day. But generally speaking, I would always say lift earlier. You can train martial arts when you're sore from lifting or tired, and usually you're not much worse at it. And especially if you're just tired, it's actually an opportunity for you to work on your technique more because you're not strong, you're not going to muscle the techniques. But if you are really tired from martial arts, especially ones that beat you up a lot, lifting is really, really, really hard after that. I've tried doing lifting after martial arts numerous times, and unless you take like 8 hours between them, it's hell. It's absolutely a travesty. So that's another point. And then just split them up in the day as much as you can, usually between AM and PM. Go from there and be realistic. And those are my big recommendations.
Okay, good tips for the videos. Okay, thanks. Okay, Mike, I recently watched a video of you talking about healthy body fat percentages. I found that one very interesting. So you explained how for males it is not unhealthy to maintain very low percentages. It's only the way men often have to get there that might be unhealthy. That was a nice comparison with the space shuttle getting into the space.
Sure.
Was a
Yeah.
good one. But it
Thanks.
struck me that you did not mention the decline in testosterone levels that almost all men will have when going towards or under the 10% body fat. Even if that low of a percentage is not unhealthy, chronically having low testosterone levels have their own negative effects on bone health, muscle mass, libido, mood, much more. Could you comment on that? Or do we just have to assume that all men who want to maintain very low levels of body fat should stay on TRT to deal with those negative effects of low testosterone?
Well, there's other hormones that are negatively affected as well, so it's not just testosterone. What I will say is this: there are individuals who are genetically relatively lean, and they can be between 6 and 8% body fat and have every hormone is completely normal. But the thing is, those people might have started out with 8% and went to 6%, and then they're fine. Or they started out with 10% and went to 7%, and then they're fine. It's the fact that you take someone in, it's the space shuttle thing again, where it's the amount of effort it takes to get down there wrecks your hormones. And then if you're down there, your hormones don't get better if you're still lean and still dieting very hard. If you come back up and stay relatively lean and eat more food, after several months, your hormones normalize to a considerable extent, depending on your genetics and depending on how much dieting you still have to do. So if you're genetically not super duper lean, then you may never renormalize your hormones unless you go above 10% or something like that. If you're genetically pretty lean, you can renormalize your hormones at significant fractions of percentages lower than normal, as long as your metabolism kicks back up and you start eating more food. And that takes months, literally months. So what I will say is it's not unhealthy at face. How do I put this best? People see contest bodybuilders and they see their striated glutes and they go, oh, that can't be healthy. It can be healthy. There's nothing about that low of body fat by itself that's not healthy. It has some downstream consequences, but probably 80% of those consequences are from what it takes to get there and stay there. But if it's not difficult for you to stay there, for example, then it's really not a problem. Here's another really good example. Endurance athletes, high-level endurance athletes, are often at 5% body fat. All their hormone levels are completely normal, and they eat like pigs. So what's the difference? They exercise so much that it makes up for it, right? They don't chronically diet super hard. So, there's nothing, if 5% body fat was just what made your hormones low by itself, every endurance athlete in the world would be fucked endocrinologically, and they're just not. And there's a bunch of people just with good genetics that walk around super lean and don't with no effort. You don't look at a guy, can you imagine, some people have like striated abs just normally. Can you imagine looking at him and be like, oh no, that's not good, man. You better gain weight. Like, no, it's fine. Like, now if someone's like in month 3 of 5% body fat and they're like eating little tiny tuna and rice packets and they're starving to death and they're cold all the time, no, they're not in their best health. Not by a long shot, because you got to remember it's a trade-off of hormones. On the one hand, their testosterone is lower, which is not a good thing in chronic term, especially if it's subclinically low. It can be borderline still clinically okay, and then there's probably not a ton of health negatives, so that you don't feel that great. On the other hand, their insulin dynamics are incredible. Their sensitivity to glucose is outrageous, right? So that's really good because that'll keep you alive. Their resting blood glucose is like 60 or something like that. Resting blood pressure is low, everything like that. So on the net balance, their health might actually be pretty decent, even if they don't have the best androgen levels at super low body fats. But if they're really struggling to stay down there, yeah, they're probably not at their healthiest. Certainly they don't feel their best, and then it's time to go up. So what I would say to people is, don't look at the body fat as much as look at what the person's eating, look at how difficult it is for them to maintain. And of course, nothing beats going to see your doctor and running a proper hormonal analysis. And once you do that, you're like, hey, the doctor's like, well, your test is a little low, but your insulin sensitivity is super high, your A1C is great. You're actually quite fine. And you can be like, wow, I guess I'm fine. And if you want to increase your body fat to have higher hormone levels to gain more muscle mass, that's a good idea. But if you don't, if you just want to stay lean and you're okay with slightly lower test, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. Yeah, I know from personal experience in 2016, I went from 15% under 10% body fat. And my mood was down, libido was down, and my hormone levels really tanked. So that was not maintainable for a long time. So I really had to regain some muscle as well, because I lost a lot of muscle with that.
Yeah, 100%. And different people have different settling points. And as settling points change over the years, I think as individuals get older and they get leaner more often, the percent body fat you can hold and successfully be okay with decent hormones can actually trend down after a while. There's some natural pros and some non-natural pros who are really lean in their off season. People ask them, like, why don't you get fatter? And they're like, because I feel fine. And it's completely correct. So it's something that has to be based on an individual assessment. I'll put it this way. If you get very lean and you feel incredible and you have great libido and everything's fine, don't freak out and gain a bunch of body fat. But on the other hand, if you've been at a super low body fat for 4 months, even if you're eating quite a bit more food than you were, if you're still no libido, you're super tired all the time, your lifting sucks, gain some body fat because it's clearly not working.
Okay. And the next question is all about that. I know you don't know, I know you don't like the lean gains approach. And can you explain why and how to overcome the fear of fat gaining while bulking?
Yeah, that's a great question. The lean gains approach works, except it has one, I don't say fatal flaw, but one really big flaw, and here it is. If you imagine all of the nutritional and hormonal arrangements that you can have to optimally gain muscle, they're also really good for gaining fat. First of all, just like we discussed, especially after a contest, until you regain to a certain level of body fat, you don't even put on much muscle. Now, you probably put on some, but it's not optimal, right? Someone going from 10 to 15% body fat probably puts on more muscle than someone going from 5 to 10% body fat, especially if that 5% was after a really nasty diet into a show. So first of all, can you imagine someone lean gaining from 5% to 7% body fat just really slowly? I don't know, man. It just wouldn't be, not a whole lot would happen, right? They would probably just gain all fat trying to do lean gains. So on the one hand, you need some body fat to keep gaining. On the other hand, let's take a tally of what things are most anabolic. First of all, a hypercaloric diet, simply presenting more nutrients as anabolic. Secondly, a high insulinergic environment, like a high serum insulin level area under the curve across the average day. How the hell do you do that with an isocaloric diet or a very mildly hypercaloric diet? It's barely detectable. A robust hypercaloric diet does that better. What about testosterone levels? Nothing boosts your test like eating an excess amount of food if you're still lean and still active. Goodbye test if you try to stay lean the entire time and never eat a proper amount of food. So what we're doing is we're taking our biggest weapons, insulin environment, testosterone environment, hypercaloric condition, and we're taking them away during the time which we're trying to gain muscle. That just doesn't seem like a good idea. Now, of course, we have this other idea is, okay, but all those things also cause fat gain. Well, short of testosterone, but high insulin environment and excess of food definitely causes fat gain. But the thing is, and here's my sort of cardinal point to a lot of these discussions, muscle is very hard to gain relative to how easy fat is to lose. So is it okay if you gain 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat? Oh my God, losing 5 pounds of fat you can do in 3 weeks. Gaining 5 pounds of muscle can take 2 years. So you want to tilt that equation towards muscle gain, and it's okay to get a little bit fatter because muscle has a retentive property, fat does not. Once you put on muscle and it sticks around for a while due to myonuclear domain and satellite cell theory, it doesn't really go anywhere. And if it does, it can be quickly regained. That's really not the case for fat. If you gain 5 pounds of fat, there's no count. I mean, you have to gain a ton of fat for fat cells to multiply and all that stuff. So as long as you're gaining moderate amounts of fat, you can lose it, no problem. So it's kind of one of the situations. My best analogy for lean gains is like trying to cook the best meal you can without dropping a single crumb onto the kitchen floor. How careful do you have to be with a measuring spoon? It's crazy. It's just wildly inconvenient. It's going to take you 5 hours to make that meal. It's going to take you 30 minutes to make that meal if it's okay to make a little bit of a mess. No, does that mean you want to just pour flour into a cup this big and flour? No, that's stupid. So you want to avoid needless problems, but you sure want to bias into the direction of let's cook this meal, not get super dirty, and we're going to finish up, as opposed to just never making a mess at all. And to answer that person's question, it was a really good question. How do you get over fat phobia? one of the ways is to focus on strength and rep strength. Just forget about your body. Just put on regular, normal clothes when you go to the gym instead of a tank top. Don't look at your pump in between the gym. Look at your logbook. Beat your reps, beat your reps, beat your weight. When you're gaining weight, you're getting strength like crazy, and it's super motivating, and you're super happy. And then when you start dieting, then switch to looking at your appearance for validation, and that can really help. Also, I'd have to say this, do some self-work, do some meditation, think about some things, put things into perspective. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you're a little bit fatter than normal, you're still the same person you were, and you can get lean anytime you want. It's just you're on purpose trying to gain muscle. If someone sees you at the airport or the gym and they look at you and you know they're looking at you like, why is that guy wearing a tank top? He's not even that lean. If they think that, they don't know about the long-term plan. Can you imagine someone seeing Phil Heath in his off season and Phil's not looking super lean? They're like, really? That's Mr. Olympia? Yes. And he's beaten every bodybuilder on the planet, and he gets leaner than anyone on the planet. So if that person scoffed at them, they would be ridiculous. You would laugh at them. So if you're worried about other people judging you for not being as lean as you usually are, those are people that just don't understand the process of gaining muscle. Who gives a shit what they think? And they'll be eating their words 3 months later when you're the leanest you've ever been. And they're like, oh, people are still, my parents do this all the time. When I go into mass phase, they're like, Misha, Misha's my Russian name. That's what they call me. They're like, Misha, you're looking kind of, are you sure this is healthy? And I'm like, no, it's not healthy. Yes, it's part of a process. And then when I get lean, they go, oh my God, you look great. You should always stay like this. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't be like this if I always stayed like this. So, you don't get jacked by staying skinny all the time. That's just something you gotta just be okay with.
Okay, great tips. Last question, Mike. On intra-workout nutrition, by now we all learned all about pre-workout, post-workout shakes and meals, but intra-workout nutrition hasn't got much attention, and I got a lot of questions on it. So what do you have to consume, if anything? Carbs like cyclic dextrines or amino acids like essential amino acid powders during hard lifting workouts, taking up till 90 minutes, for example?
Sure. So a couple of things. Intra-workout nutrition received a significant amount of attention about 5 years ago. There's a reason it doesn't receive a lot of attention now, and I'll tell you what that reason is in a minute. The short answer is it doesn't do all that much, right? So it's good that it doesn't receive a lot of attention because it doesn't deserve it. Secondly, if you're training for less than 60 to 90 minutes, the digestion times, especially under duress when you're exercising hard, exertion slows digestion ability and uptake speed. So you're not even going to get any of that stuff until you're done training anyway. So if you got to work out longer than an hour, longer than 90 minutes, yeah, okay, intra-workout actually makes a big difference, which is why in the endurance community, when they do 4-hour cycle rides, they don't discuss nutrition unless intra-workout is involved. Like if you coach cyclists and they're like, what should I drink and eat on my long rides? You're like, nothing. They're like, okay, you're an idiot. They just fire you on the spot as well as they should. So, bodybuilding workouts, hypertrophy workouts, like if it's less than an hour, there's really just no need for workout nutrition. You can have it. I'll talk about what you can have that might boost your results by 1,000% or something. But, if it's up to 90 minutes, maybe you got an issue there that you can help. If it's over 90 minutes, there's some advantages, right? As far as what to take. Cyclic dextrines are not vetted by the literature. They might be cool, but maybe not, and they're expensive, so fuck that. And then amino acids are stupid because whey protein gets absorbed, it clumps into little fractions of 2 or 3 amino acid strings, gets absorbed faster. There's probably more anabolic than a pure amino acid solution, so it's even better. And whey protein is cheaper, and it provides you with tons of high quality amino acids anyway. High quality whey protein isolate is literally like, everything good about amino acid powder, except better in every possible way. So carbohydrates, you want something fast digesting with a lot of glucose in it. Sometimes you want fructose as well because it can saturate those receptors. So something like Gatorade powder, Powerade, Glucosade if you're in Europe or in the United Kingdom. And then, maybe just dextrose powder is totally fine, or maltodextrin is really good. And then whey protein is super awesome. A little bit of salt to maintain your hydration and a considerable amount of water, because dehydration, even in 60 minutes, really is a pressing concern. So I would make a shake like that, consume it during a workout, sip it between sets. And towards the end of the workout, you maybe finish about half of it, finish the rest of it, go home and have your post-workout meal, and you really set yourself up for something really good. Another really tiny effect is if you taste sweet things, you actually, your endurance ability becomes enhanced. So the last couple of reps of a workout can be enhanced by him simply having a sweet beverage, which is really kind of cool if you think about it. To that point, having dextrose or whey protein powder and so on and so forth, getting that sweet shake is really awesome because it can maybe extend your abilities just by a little bit.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. That were all the questions for today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I got to run, but I'll talk to you later. Let me know if you want to have me on again, okay?
Okay, go for it, Mike.
All
Thank you
right,
so
thank you.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.